That's it? All right, call the meeting to order. Start with the pledge. Just pledge allegiance to the flag. Right. Got a whole crew here tonight. All right, so next thing is introduction to new district staff. Would you like to do it?
Okay, so on the screen, we have Melissa Betts, who is our new social studies teacher at the high school. She took Georgia Herring's position.
Okay.
She was unable to join us, but she is here virtually. So.
Hello.
I'll first go through the staff that's here. So I'll start over here with Jack Gilroy. Jack is a new social studies teacher in the middle school. Then we have Anna Nairati, and she is here as an ENL teacher. Her home building is Alden Place, but she's in multiple buildings throughout the district, throughout the day. Then we have Kimberly Gully, and Kimberly is here at the middle school teaching 7th grade English. I'm doing all this from memory, so if I confuse any of you, I apologize. And then we have Janine Standen. Janine just came to us as a new food service worker. So she's working out of Alden Place. Okay, behind Janine in the gray sweater, we have Mary Karp. Yes, Mary is a new aide in our pre-K room. Next to her, we have Jenna Von Elm. Jenna actually has worked with us for a while through the Healthy Kids program. She pushed in last year as part of our community-based organization partnership under the UPK grant. And Jenna is now an employee of Millbrook, also working in the pre-K program. So welcome to those ladies. In the row behind our first over here, we have Benjamin Glassman. Ben is here working for a leave replacement in the English department. He's working at the high school, teaching 9th and 10th grade English. And then we have Goli Ingenito, who is here. Gally Ingenito, who is here. Seeing his name in print first has screwed me up. I'm trying to remember how to say it, so I apologize. Ingenito, he's here as a security monitor at the high school. Behind him, we have Ms. Carrie Martin, and Carrie is teaching in our math department. She is teaching algebra. And then next to her, we have Amy Novak. Amy is the new hire in the special education department based out of the high school. And in the back, we have Ryan Ware. Ryan is a new custodial worker for the district. He's been here for the majority of the summer, but new in this school year.
Nice. Well, welcome to everybody. Welcome to Millbrook Central School District and hopefully the family of Millbrook. Because this is a pretty tight community. And I hope you all enjoy your careers here. We certainly need your help. So thank you for joining us. I don't know if anybody else wants to say anything, but thank you all. Anybody want to say anything? Like get your career started off on the right foot? I think the president report. What's that? Yeah, go ahead.
Also, I'm doing for food service. And I'm really happy to be here. I've substituted for about 3 days now. And children are terrific. It's really nice. And I've met good teachers. It's terrific. I'm just so happy to be here.
Very good.
Thank you. We're happy to have you.
Anybody else? You're teachers. You're supposed to be able to, stand up, say stuff. Oh, anyway, thank you all for being here. Thank you all for taking the time out of your schedule to come here and see us and let us see you, more importantly. And we certainly, like I said, we certainly need your help. So thank you all. Very good. All right. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda vote. Do I have a motion? Well, first, do I have anything, anybody want anything physically pulled from this list. Good night. See you. Good night. All right, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Do I have a second? Any discussion, questions, comments? Anybody? All right, all in favor? Aye. Any against? Okay. Next is it's just really for your reading entertainment. It's the Dutchess County BOCES Spotlight. No action to be taken on it, just a status of what's going on at BOCES. Next, we have the president, vice president's report. I don't think I have anything. Chris, do you have anything?
I do not.
Okay. All right, we'll move to the superintendent reports.
That is me. So, at the last meeting, we spoke about Without Walls, which is a community-based services organization. Before I get into my report, I do want to recognize two additional people who were here in the audience. Alicia O'Connell stepped out for an emergency when we were introducing new staff. But she is our new principal of Elm Drive. She was previously introduced at a meeting, but she is here for new staff night. And right next to her is Alexandra Chanowski. Alex was our CSA chairperson here in the district for the past 2 years. And she was just appointed as the supervisor of people personnel services in the interim vacancy as I'm interim superintendent. So she will be taking over all things PPS, special education, Committee on Special Education, and supporting our psychologists and nurses as well. So welcome to those two ladies. Kayla Craig, she's a new AIS teacher at Alden Place. She did walk in. She was here. I'm not sure if she thought that was over and may have left, but Kayla was also here as well. So back to my report. Without Walls is a community-based services organization, as I had mentioned previously, and we're working on creating a schedule that will work both for the agency and for Millbrook. I'm excited to announce that at this point, we actually have filled our food services vacancy, which is something that felt like it was never going to happen. It's taken so long to do that, but we are really excited that we're fully staffed. So this will be in addition to that food services staff. So it's an amazing opportunity for the district and also for those individuals that will be able to come in, work, learn some skills, strengthen skills that they already have, and be able to support our staff here.
So that was going to be my question. So is there something formal that?
I'm sorry,
Well-
can you speak up? I think I'm having a hard time
Oh. We
hearing.
could kill those.
Yeah.
No, I was gonna say, is there some sort of formal education? Because, without Walls, I think is really here to augment what our employees can do. I make sure that they're both aligned, that our employees know how to work without Walls.
Yes, so more of that to come. Right now, we're working on fleshing out an agreement between the district and the organization, which will be brought forth to the board. And since there's no financial obligation, because this is a volunteer service, it's really more about, insurance and that. So, but we're working that through, so more to come on that, but I wanted you to know we are moving forward with that organization, which is an awesome opportunity on both sides. And I think it'll be mutually beneficial. And I think it's great for our students to, have that experience of interacting with people who have differences, right? And are able to support them in their daily school life. So I'm really excited. It may take a little bit to get it off the ground, but it's well worth it. So additionally, I did mention Alexandra Chanowski was just appointed. So congratulations to Alex. We also have our senior typist to support the facilities department, food services, and Elliot. So that will be the full complement of his clerical support. So Nancy O'Hara will be starting on Monday. So that's exciting. I'm just excited as we continue to check off all of these positions that have been vacant for so long. I think we're finally starting to feel like we have all the staff that we need, at least getting into place, and we'll really be able to start moving forward in some positive directions. Due to Camille Patron's vacancy, we have a principal account clerk position that is becoming vacant. And we were able to secure that list from civil service. There were 14 people on that list, and that list has been canvassed. So we're hoping, right? We just need one strong candidate from that list. So we're hoping that we will find someone to fill that position as well. Additionally, if I can just skip down one bullet to the proposal for Camille Patron. As I believe I had mentioned at the last meeting, Camille knows that there's a big transition happening in the business office with multiple positions becoming vacant, being filled, and then the need to cross-train. So while they are working with Myra, our new employee in the business office, on cross-training with accounts payable in addition to payroll, Camille has offered to stay on even after her official resignation date, on a part-time basis, just to make sure that everyone is trained up to the level that they need to be, so that this is seamless and that there's no negative impact on the district. So, you know, there will be a proposal for Camille to do that coming forward to the board in the near future.
That's honestly, that's excellent. That's great forethought, because we've had too many times when important positions like that, you know, there's just this, oh, now what do we do?
Right.
So kudos to you.
Yeah,
Very
thank you. And I mean, her willingness is really, that's the biggest piece, that she's willing to do this. We know that when we have turnover, you know, there's a period of time when that person is really only at about 80% capacity because they're still being trained. So the longer we can keep that support in place, the better. So we look forward to that, and we really appreciate Camille's willingness. We had reached out to civil service regarding an assistant food services director list. And at this point, we've been told that because of the titles that already exist in the district, we're unable to fill that particular position, but we do have the opportunity to pull a list for food service manager and to be able to move forward with that position. So that would be the next proposal that I will be coming forward with, will be for a food services manager position for our food services department. While we do have staff at this current moment where we need a leader for that department. So that's what we're working to fill. And then we also at the last board meeting spoke about supervision and the potential need for additional supervision in buildings. I met with the principals, actually the entire administrative team, and we talked about the fact that the highest need time for additional supervision that can't necessarily be adequately covered by teacher duties would be during the lunch periods, recess periods at the elementary schools, but lunch and recess. And each building principal felt as though if they had one additional monitor per building, that would be extremely helpful in providing coverage and providing hallway coverage, monitoring, just for safety, security purposes. That was the recommendation from each of the building administrators. We will be talking more about safety and security in this meeting and in others going forward, but that was the conversation that came from the last board meeting. In instruction, we have had lots of trainings that have been planned in the short time that Dr. Watkins has been here in district. She has taken the ball and continued to run with it in terms of the Branching Minds, which is the SEL platform that will house all of our interventions in district. So she's working with Samantha Holtborg, our supervisor of student services, because some of it will be SEL and related to the whole child, and some of it will be focused purely on academics and attendance. Additionally, on the October 11th Superintendent's Conference Day, along with Branching Minds training for our teachers and staff, we also will have Eureka Math training as well. And in terms of instruction, we have, you remember, those of you who were on the data committee hearing the boy, the moi, and the oi. So that's the beginning of the year. So our beginning of the year benchmarking has started in IXL, and I know Rick will say more about that in his report in just a few minutes. In terms of the operations department, there's a couple of big things that have been sorted out, which is really great. Ken Crowley has been working with First Student and some parents from our private school trip, specifically to Our Lady of Lourdes. There were some difficulties with the routing, so he actually sat with them and was able to augment the routes so that students are no longer arriving to school late and no longer arriving home from school late. So we were able to fix some routing issues, which is obviously great for those students because they need to attend their classes on time. For the next 3 bullets, this is really Elliot's area of expertise. So at the last meeting, we had brought forth some heating repair issues and also some cooling issues at the high school. So I'm going to kick it to Elliot to explain the need to draw from the facilities repair reserve as a resolution to some heating issues that have become apparent, and also in the future we'll talk about the cooling issues that we need to address as well.
Great, thanks, Caroline. So, as most of you probably remember, as part of our budget resolution last year for this current budget year, we did fund a maintenance repair reserve for $100,000. That's to address emergency or close to emergency needs that can't wait for the whole budget year to take over, things that we didn't see coming. You also may remember that we hired a firm after putting out a bid for boiler cleaning and repairs. And so part of that process is a thorough inspection of our boiler plants. And so that work is in progress. And what that work identified, in addition to realizing that it hadn't been done to that level of thoroughness previously, at least in quite some time, there were some mechanical issues that were discovered. Some of these are related to things we already know about. So when I say the condensate tank at Elm Drive, I'm going to remind you about the cloud of steam that tends to puff out of that building sometimes in the winter. So what that is it's a steam heating plant. We have a tank that collects the return condensation back to the boilers to recirculate water. That tank is completely rotted out. So we are unable to recapture the water we put into the system. We basically take water, boil it, push the steam to heat the building, and then the steam goes into the sky and we make new steam with new water. It's not the most efficient thing. It burns a whole lot of extra fuel. It's not good for the equipment. So that tank needs to be replaced. Additionally, at Elm Drive, there's an air compressor. So we have pneumatic HVAC controls in that building. What that means very simply is there are air lines that run throughout the building all off the single compressor. The level of pressure in those lines dictates whether or not the equipment opens or closes, valves open and close, or the fans activate and deactivate. That compressor is not working. And so everything is set to fail on, which means that boiler plant is running wild every time we turn it on. So in the interest of not just conserving fuel, but protecting our equipment, we need to replace both the condensate tank and the compressor at that building. So that's Elm. At our high school, our newest building, we have a hot water heating system. There's a pump, a circulator pump that sits on top of each of the main boilers. We have 2. And boiler number 1 circulator pump is, I would say, hanging on by a thread, not very operational. We don't run it unless we absolutely have to. And if we do run it, we have the risk of it failing. And so that is right now identified as a potential rebuild at a cost of $3,500. We're hoping that they can send it out, rebuild it, put it back. If they can't, then that number goes up because then we have to replace the pump. But all in between the high school and the 2 issues at Elm Drive, we're looking at a total unanticipated, unbudgeted expense of $43,134 at present. So this is the perfect candidate, I would think, for that repair reserve money. This is something that we didn't see coming when we were building the budget last year. And if these things do fail, it would cost us valuable instructional time. We have, by law, we have to maintain 65-degree minimum temperatures in every school building from the first day of school to the last day of school. And while we're not at extreme risk right now, I'm not 100% confident that these plants will make it through the deepest parts of the winter season unless we address these issues. And so I respectfully request the board consider releasing maintenance reserve funds to make these repairs, knowing that there are other issues that may come as we continue to explore our plans. Caroline did mention cooling. So right now, again, for those that may or may not be aware, our high school, which is roughly 16 years old, has a 2 chiller system for air conditioning for cooling purposes. Over time, through practices of deferred maintenance, one chiller was sacrificed in favor of the other. And I would say cannibalized would be the term that would be used, mechanically speaking. And now the one that we have left is not operational. So we're not really anticipating a need to cool the building in October. But in preparation of the spring, I'd like to address that chiller in the next couple of months. We do have our partners, our vendor partners, working off a quote to repair the chiller or bring it back, at least bring one of them back online. I'll bring that forward to the board. That might be something we might consider, depending on where that price tag comes in. We might want to consider that for some of the remaining funds in the repair reserve. But again, this is indoor air quality for our kids at the high school, more in anticipation of the spring than an immediately winter.
Are
But
you getting a quote on the second one too?
well, I need to get one on. The issue with our chillers is that, although it was only 16 years ago, that refrigerant is no longer in use by the EPA. It's actually banned and phased out. So we're hoping we can find the parts from older machines to bring it back to life, because the cost of ripping that system out and replacing it would be more of a capital project than a repair project, put it that way. So again, as long as we can get one of them back online, ideally, if I can get them both back online, even if I get the quote to fix the one that's in better shape, and then we budget for the intensive repair of the other, maybe as a capital outlay project next year, or depending on where it lands. But we wanted to really share with the board what we see coming. Thank you, board, for funding the repair reserve last year, because you folks saw this potential happening, and it's happened. So we're very grateful that we have the repair reserve available. And we would hope that the board would be willing to release the funds. There are 2 different ways to do it. We did speak to council. The board can elect to spend the funds and commit to replenishing those funds over the next 2 years, in which case the board can take action and just authorize the expenditure. If the board wants to make it a one-time expense and not commit to replenish the funds, then we have to hold a public hearing in advance of that authorization. So those are our options.
Well, obviously, I mean, from my standpoint, we have to have a maintenance reserve, because the stuff went on for God knows how long. Things like this that were never brought, I don't believe were ever brought to the board that, hey, we're gonna take one of the chillers and just tear it apart so we can keep one of them running. So to me, we're gonna be finding these things constantly, because for some reason, the district was just not well maintained. And we need to stop that, but we also need to get out ahead of this too. So that, everything should be inspected, because we can't keep coming in and going, oh, it was the last guy, it was the last guy. We need to stop, put a line in the sand and say, from now on, it's those guys. And if it breaks, or if there's something that was just ignored, we've talked a lot about holding people accountable. This is a perfect example, even though the people that should be held accountable aren't here.
But we do have those systems in place now where we will be looking into all of those things as sort of like a baseline right now, and then we will be, looking for maintenance. We've set up all of those contracts to have that ability to do that and to stay on top of these needs. But unfortunately, in this current time where we are, we're going to have to kind of do a little bit of uncovering and just.
That was just me getting on a soapbox.
Okay.
for a little bit.
Do you need help getting down?
When in truth, I mean, I gotta give John a lot of credit, because a lot of this is coming in with the legwork that John's been empowered to do. It's everything from replacing all the steam traps that are all in place that hadn't been done for years. We're addressing years of preferred maintenance practices. And I think over the last 9 months, we've done a pretty good job of getting, at least catching up to some of these things. And it's very important to be ahead of them, but right now we're still playing catch up. And I think our guys that we have in-house are doing a very good job of identifying critical needs quickly and bringing them to me and in turn bringing them to you folks in a timely manner so that we can make decisions, like short-term and long-term.
Right.
So I guess the question for the board is, we can prepare this. I'm rolling the dice that I don't have a major cold snap in the next 2 weeks, in October, but if the board is comfortable, we can prepare, we can talk to legal, prepare the resolution. Basically, we would be declaring this an urgent matter that would require the release of funds, and the board does have to take action to authorize the purchases. If I have the chiller quotes in time and it fits the budget, I will present them to you in preparation for the next meeting. If not, I'd say let's move on to heat now. We can always get to the chillers as we move through the winter.
Questions, comments?
Were any of these things flagged in the building commission survey?
Yes, the condensate tank was flagged. It's just one of those things where if we want to, we can upgrade the design of the plant in the capital project, but this is an in-kind replacement we can do right now to kind of stopgap.
No, I understand. I just want to know if we knew about this in August or we literally just.
We knew that the condensate tank needed to be addressed. Once John started activating everything and working with the vendors to test run it at the beginning of school, we realized that it was more urgent than we thought when we shut down in the spring. The high school pump I was not aware of because we weren't running them during the assessment. And the compressor has been failing and needs to be addressed, but it was also there as end of life, so.
My question is, it seems the majority of the 43,000 and change that was quoted is for the issue at Allen with the heating. Is that going to later be part of the capital project? So essentially, are we gonna spend like 40,000 to fix this, but then later it's gonna be replaced?
The air compressor piece might be, so I would say that, if I have to preface this with if, because we have $42 million in need, $41.7 million in need, and we probably don't have the means to do it all. If we were to consider, upgrading and modernizing the way we control the heat at Elm, then the compressor would be rendered obsolete. But the odds of us bringing a new system online with a May vote is probably 3 years from right now. So it's throwing good money after bad, but 3 years later. So it buys us 3 years of manageable heating systems and ventilation systems at that.
And I'm assuming that you're gonna save us a tremendous amount of fuel oil.
I commit to nothing, but I'm as optimistic as you are, Mr. Hartsman.
No, it's, I mean, it's so the path forward is either we take action, do a motion that basically says we want to spend it, but we'll put it back.
Correct.
Or we have to put it out for a vote if we're just gonna spend it.
For a public
You have
hearing.
to put it in
A public-
public
yeah,
hearing. It's just
sorry.
like, basically, it's if you're gonna spend the public's money and not replenish it, you gotta let them know and let them have a say. And if you're gonna declare it an emergency and say, we're gonna spend this money, but we're gonna put it back, you can do it.
Yeah, I mean, my opinion is we need to spend it immediately. We need to put it back. The only thing that it really gets in our way of is like the amount of money we would have to put in the capital reserve or one of the other reserves.
Yeah, and not to forget that the capital reserve currently can only go up to 10 million, and it's at 8.9.
Yeah.
Right, so we can't go beyond that
Right.
at this current moment anyway, so depending on what we have in unassigned fund balance to be able to do that. We would still have limitations on what we could add to cap reserve.
Well, that's something the board's gonna need to deal with. I would think in the early part of 23 is do we expand the top end of that capital reserve?
We can always establish a new one as well in
Yeah.
parallel without completely leaving out the one.
So any comments? Spend it or spend it and put it back. I guess that's the easiest way to describe it.
Vowing to replenish it, where would replenishment come from, I guess, or how would we make sure that happens?
We would do it as part of the budget cycle over the next 2 years. So for example, if we, let's say that, the other quote comes in and it's 75,000, let's say 80,000 for round numbers, right? We could do 40 in 23, 24 and 40 in 24, 25 to bring that 80 back. So you have 2 years to replenish. But we would do it as a line item in the budget, just like we created it last year and funded it. So this year it would be, okay, as part of the 23, 24 budget cycle, we're going to have a line item to fully fund the $100,000 repair reserve, or increase it, or change it, but to put the money back.
So what's everybody's feeling? Spend it and put it back. Howard?
And then put it back.
Yeah.
That's-
Agreed.
Yeah, my only question is, is there any danger that we're gonna say we're gonna spend it and put it back and then find like 9 other things that are wrong that we need to, so we wouldn't be able to put it back later, or we're,
Well, I mean, if we find other things wrong, they may come out of that, like you can put it back and then spend it
Okay.
back, right? So it creates a cycle. I've
Alright,
never
so-
had to use this repeatedly and multiple years, but I'm hoping that doesn't happen. this time.
So once
Everything
we take a motion, on it, then it has to be put in the budget as a line item. We can't just go, well, we were gonna put it back, but like I do with my checkbook. All right, so do we have that?
That's under
motion?
new business.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. All right,
Thank you.
So again, from the last meeting, we learned of needing new salt and sand procurement for this year. So Elliot has been working with Mike Kelly, the highway superintendent from LaGrange. He has agreed to enter into an agreement with us for the procurement of road salt and sand for this year and, potentially going forward. So this lot is down near the intersection of 55 and 82. So it's only about, 15-minute drive that we would be able to obtain the salt and sands needed. So we're working on the details of that contract, what that will look like. And so that will be forthcoming to the board, but it's a solution to a problem that we just learned of recently. So yeah, additionally, we do have a quote for updates to our vape sensors. This has been very helpful in being a deterrent to vaping, or at least identifying vaping and being able to work with those students. We do not see this as the only solution. We are working on obviously educating students about the dangers of vaping and whatnot. But as those choices are still being made, we will be updating the vape detectors, and we have that price quote here for 30 units plus a 5-year licensing and support agreement for each. It comes to roughly $12,300, and that's for 30 of them. So that will replace some, and it will add additional vape sensors throughout the middle and high school.
so who would be the monitor point for the middle school part?
So it would be to the administrators, just the same. So it would go to Mr. Cabello, just like it goes to Mr. Sipe. And I don't know if anyone else gets those alerts. Okay, who gets them in the high school?
Mr. Hamel. And Kathy.
And do the monitor people, do they get them? I mean, if we're gonna hire that was one of, you brought up the monitors before. We really need to have a very succinct set of responsibilities for them. And
Yep.
maybe it's, if you're monitoring the middle school and a thing goes off, they'll find out what's going on. I'm just, I don't want to.
I'm sure the administrators would love to help with
Yeah,
that because
yeah.
it's, you could be in the middle of something, in the middle of
Yep.
a serious meeting and you have to drop everything because you have to like.
Well,
hit
you
the
also,
green light.
you also don't wanna, gets it and it's the vape sensor here and where is he,
Right.
By the time he gets there, or somebody gets there, they're already gone.
Yeah, so monitor training is something that we've been talking about recently anyway. So more about that, but we could definitely incorporate that type of training into it and that responsibility as well.
What you normally would do is look at the camera and the timestamp and see who actually, right, okay. So it doesn't have to be an immediate response, but.
It's better to be, yeah. For an abundance of reasons, it's better to be.
Sure.
So additionally, we had a conversation about food service equipment, after our building walkthroughs, and we were able to have our facilities folks create a list, and Elliot, I think you have it in spreadsheet form, right? Yep, so they were able to visit all the buildings, meet with the food service staff, look at all the equipment. Some of it they had inspected to just see what is like repairable and what is getting to a point where repairs no longer make sense. So we actually have a spreadsheet that talks about all of the equipment in each of the kitchens and sort of the current condition that it's in. It is a sortable table by building. So it goes through, you know, excellent, good, fair, poor kind of thing. And the type of basically urgency that comes with all of this. So,
So has somebody, I mean, we're hiring, finally getting new food service people. Personally, I was hoping that by getting new food service people, we would also get new food, you know, like, hey, this is what we should be cooking, this is what we should be giving our kids. Now, maybe everything is exactly the way it should be, but has anybody from like the food services team sort of gone through this list and said, you know, we're not gonna use the automated potato peeler because we don't do peeled potatoes. You know, I'm making it up, but because I really would like to see them, you know, try to find ways to make the food better, make it healthier, make it whatever. And then I don't know if that needs the equipment we have or if it needs new equipment. But we should, before we go crazy spending money. I mean, if there's something that's gonna cripple our current cafeteria, that's one thing. But before we go and start, you know, just buying new stuff or repairing the old stuff, we really should take a look at, is there a way for us to improve
Yep.
what they're served?
Yep.
Have someone come in and
We did,
analyze the menu?
Yep, so we had a food service consultant that came in. At this point, she essentially has met her obligation as per that first contract, which was to be able to do end of the year inventory, to get this year's menu off the ground, to be able to do all of our direct certification for free and reduced price lunches. And I mean, she was a huge asset in that regard. We do not have her on as a consultant on an ongoing basis. And while we do have food service staff that has been secured at this point, we have not yet started where they're actually working and full just yet. So we just approved our last two folks this evening. And then there are more conversations to be had, which are probably more appropriate for executive session, just because they involve, you know, particular individuals and roles that they could potentially play.
So when this person made up the menu, I guess, for this year, did they do it based on, well, here's the equipment they have and where they get their food, so they have no choice but to serve this? Or did they look at it as, you know, here's, French toast sticks? I don't know if they still serve those, but French toast sticks really aren't a breakfast, you know? So, and I mean, did they look at that for the menu, you know, sort of balance what we have versus what we can do?
Yes, and I will say that one of the things about school food service is that it's very prescriptive. What we can serve, I should say, what we can serve in combination. For everything has to be a balanced meal. If it is one of the subsidized meals, it has to be balanced, and child nutrition actually gives you a prescriptive balance of what that looks like from the macronutrients, all that. So
we can't have food trucks out back.
no, but I'm in if we can.
Yeah.
steak, and I have no idea what a taco steak is, so with my son, like, I have to make him lunch, but I was reading in the lovely municipal articles that we get email now that some learning egg can't be done, but there we mentioned, let's see, we need to have like a curry rice and eat more flavorful. I don't know if we're interested in that per se. But I also think there was point, there's a balance of having to hit the nutritional values for children, but also our price point, like Dutchess Days or Salmon, their price, their lunch is not $3. Like I was probably in school, my lunch was $3. So I don't know who we can bring into that. I know, I have an old friend who just did like a challenge for her, where she had to shop at the dollar store, meet nutritional values and meet a budget for like a family of 3. And that's very interesting to find the outcomes where you can find nutrition and nutrition. So I don't know if we need to bring someone else in that can say, you can reinvent your meal this way, but still need nutrition. I point, or that was the point of the contract. I don't know, but I think it's something to look into because my kid loves to eat lunch, my older child, and so it's just exciting when you see foods and flavors.
Yeah, absolutely. So everything you just said is true, in terms of, you know, we have to meet those guidelines. But I also think, you know, just to be very transparent, is we've had, a department that has been in survival mode. So I'm not sure that creativity was, you know, front of mind. And rightfully so, right? They just wanted to make sure that the kids had what they needed to eat. I think we could potentially be more creative. I am not an expert on this, and I wouldn't want to speak out of turn as to what we could or could not, or how we can make that happen. I also know that there's some competitive bidding and whatnot that happens. I think even like last year, you know, it happened like mid last year for this year. So we might already have inventory that's like earmarked or even in-house, in terms of non-perishables. So it may be something that would take time and could potentially be changed and introducing new foods over time. But it's not something that's gonna happen next week, you know? And I think you're probably right. I think we probably could have a consultant who could come and work with the staff existing, and if there's a skills gap that we would need to fill in order to help them be, you know, more creative or, you know, bring on new foods, whatnot. We could certainly explore that now that we have a full staff. Way too impossible for folks, you know, barely.
Once the
Even
staff
coverage.
is complete and on the ground, I mean, you can't march somebody in and go, okay, what are you gonna do? You know, but we really, just like we expect from technology, from facilities, from academic, we need to have a plan from whoever this food service manager is that incorporates all the cafeterias, all the food, and, you know, bring recommendations to us with price tags.
Right.
But bring recommendations to us so that, you know, we can make improvements in food service, just like we've been doing it everywhere else, or most everywhere else.
Mhm.
Very good. Okay.
Yeah, so one more point, during our policy discussion, gosh, I don't even know what day that was. But we had a policy meeting the other day. During that meeting, we talked about a health and safety policy that needs to be differentiated. There's a health and safety policy and, associated committee that is required and needs to be differentiated from the current quote unquote safety committee. That really is more of a district emergency response team. And we are going to be needing to form this committee, this health and safety committee, as per the commissioner's regulations. So from here forward, I will be referring to our district emergency response team. That is the current safety and security. This other committee is the health and safety committee that will handle things like unresolved health and safety complaints in the district, investigating those, as well as, you know, creating dispositions for them, consulting with the district officials in inspections of safety ratings of all the occupied buildings. So not safety training, not safety drilling, but safety ratings. Monitoring like safe school construction projects, including periodic meetings to review. So as we look forward on the horizon to a capital project, right? This is going to be something that might be a very frequently meeting committee as we go through, inspect, issue health readings and whatnot, working with some of the construction experts on those projects. And then they would also need to conduct walkthroughs of any completed construction products to ensure that everything is up to safety rating expectations, et cetera. So just to start to create that common language, we will have to change the use of those committee titles and make sure that we, at a subsequent meeting, create this new health and safety committee as it is required by the commissioner. And then just in some other news around the district, we will have a PTO meet and greet on the Alden lawn. It is picnic style. So bring your friends, your family, and your picnic basket, maybe a blanket, and we will all meet on the Alden lawn just to come together as a community after the opening of school. Additionally, I want to commend the building principals who have had their open houses thus far. And also look forward to, we have another one this Thursday. And then I wanted to just put a date out there, more to come on this, but we will be having Family University series throughout the district this year, throughout the school year. They will be focused primarily on social emotional learning for this school year. And our first one will be hosted by the middle school staff. And that will be on October 18th. So more to come on that. At last meeting, we talked about and approved tonight the loaning of football helmets to some of our friendly neighbors. Mr. Hamel did email me thanking the board for their support in this effort. He let us know that last year we were able to loan some of our helmets to Rise City, Pine Plains, and Dover. All of those helmets were returned without damage to the reconditioning company. And this fall, Spack and Kill, Pine Plains, and Pauling were in need, as helmets are in high demand and supply is very low. We had full outfitting for our modified football program and had an additional 40 helmets on the shelf that we just approved to lend to our neighbors. So Mr. Hamel just wanted to say thank you so much for extending this demonstration of good sportsmanship and, you know, neighborly positive relationships. So thank you. And that concludes my report.
Carolyn, there's a bullet parking along Elm Drive at Smith.
Oh, yes.
It's,
I don't know why I skipped that, sorry. So, we have had some, complaints about our neighbors along Elm Drive, that their driveways are being blocked. Parents, a decent number of parents come to pick their children up at Elm Drive, and that's wonderful. But I think in that line moving along, we may not realize that we're blocking our neighbors' driveways. So it's very frustrating for them, and I get it. Part of the difficulty is that we as a school district cannot police the streets of Millbrook. So this was just kind of a public announcement. I know that a letter was also sent home as well, but just a reminder that if you are coming to pick your children up, that's great, but please be mindful of the neighbors living along Elm Drive, not to block their driveways, as they do have to get in and it's inconvenient for them. But that was really.
Yeah, I mean, did we talk with Jared about it? Just that.
We have,
We
and
don't really have to do it, but I mean, I would assume Jared could go down there
Yeah.
and sort of, you know.
and Mike Freer went along
Yeah.
and, you know, he spoke to the cars and just tried to remind
Okay.
them, and we try to keep reminding them. But, you know, I don't think it's anything anybody's doing intentionally. I think they're just sort of in a haste to get their children and maybe not aware that they're blocking someone's driveways, but just something to think about.
Okay,
Thank you for that,
no problem.
Rick.
Sorry, a couple of questions.
Oh, okay.
It may involve COVID, I know none of us. I just wanted to see if to protocol is the right word, but I'll use it. Protocols or procedures are still in effect because I haven't heard otherwise. So one is really a nurse question, but I know you would know the answer. So if a child has a symptom
Mhm.
consistent with COVID and they cannot come to school, in order to return, does the family have to provide
proof of a negative COVID test?
I do not believe so. But I'm happy to get that answer and send it back to you. I can basically tell you that all of the protocols that were in existence before are essentially no longer in existence. It's a self isolation if you're positive for 5 days, and then you should return wearing a mask.
Right,
There's lots of should language instead of
Yes.
must language at this point in time.
yeah,
The one thing that I will say is that, the most consistent thing about the entire pandemic is change, right? So this could change at any time, and I would say would likely change if the infection rates in this area were to continue to rise. But at this point in time, there's no test to stay obligation, there's no, so it's basically what you would do if your child had a fever or symptoms prior to.
right.
Yep, that's gonna be the same thing we're gonna do now.
And then my other question, this is not a Department of Health or CDC, it was what we implemented as a district, so I'm assuming this is still in effect. If a child is in isolation because they tested positive for COVID, are we still offering tutors to the family?
No, as it is, so we're not auditing classes,
Right.
we're treating it as always was for a multi-day absence. And I believe that the policy language remains with a long-term absence, that students would be provided tutors.
It was 10 days.
So we didn't, I mean. Just wondering why we didn't continue that. We're still have cases of COVID.
I know,
But there's, I mean, there's people that are out for 2 days with strep, 2 days, out for 3
Yeah,
days.
no,
with-
that's just an isolation
So-
of it's 5 days, so if we were offering that.
So,
months ago- well,
Yep, so the reason if you
June?
recall, the reason we went to having students audit classes
Mhm.
was that securing tutors for that large number of students was next to impossible. And actually became an equity issue. So, at that point in time, the way that it was being dealt with was through the auditing. We're no longer offering that. And we're going back to multi-day absences, which the board policy states 10 days or more.
And now you can come back after 5, right? With
Right.
COVID.
With a
After
mask.
That President Biden said the pandemic's over.
Yeah,
I don't know if this helps any, Chris. I know for Alvin, a lot of the teachers put so much information on Google Classroom.
Mhm.
So we don't have tutoring. I don't know if that's just a classroom specific question for the teacher. So I know like for my child has a 4th grade, they put a lot of videos kind of about math problems and writing assignments. So if there's that as an alternative.
I think the majority of teachers do utilize the Google Classroom at this point. Providing that support, I think most of the teachers would also be more than helpful upon return to, help get the student caught up.
You still have questions?
I think I have another one about like monitors, but if yours is
Mine,
about.
actually, it's kind of quick, obviously, talking about like tutoring, is there any way, so what I heard last year, we're digging here, river that like high school students could tutor or were tutoring possibly some of the elementary, like, I don't know if they get like some kind of credit or community service or anything like that. Is that possible to do? Just because like in reading, we have kids that have fallen behind or are struggling with, whether it's reading, math, whatever. So is there a way that we could do that, have like the high school kids do after school or?
Potentially, I mean, we could reach out to the Honor Society students. My only concern in saying yes to that is that many of our students who may be interested in that are also probably the same students who are involved in clubs, activities,
Yeah.
athletics, that kind of thing. They tend to be the ones that are all over those opportunities. And therefore, sometimes there's like competing commitments, but not to say that we can't explore it.
Or would, again, I'm probably dating myself with this, but is there any way a teacher, and I know it's a contract thing, could stay, say there's like 5 out of 20 kids in a class that just have not, their spelling or their reading or their math, like, are struggling with it, possibly due to the pandemic. Is there, I'm just hoping, and again, we don't have to answer tonight, but is there any way that we can try to get these kids caught up? Because I feel like in talking to other parents, I feel like, and maybe it's just the elementary level, because that's where the space that I'm in with my child, that they're having a tough time, whether they learned online for a year and a half, whatever it is. And it's even in like the people that we get on board, that I think we can start maybe thinking about how any opportunity for the kids to stay after one day, a week, or, I don't know, maybe a teacher would stipend, but, or if there's anything to do to kind of help these kids. I know, like, maybe they couldn't attend the summer program or something, but I think there's anything we
Yeah,
can do.
so I can say yes and maybe. Yes, we have grant funds available for this type of recovery post-COVID. And maybe, because even with the money, we need someone who is willing and interested to do, that, right? So, we can explore anything that you would like, and do the best we can to fill that.
I don't remember in Alden and Elm, because it's been a few years now. But in the middle school and high school, the teachers are more than accommodating to stay after school with students. All you have to do is ask them, and usually they're there, and they give them 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and then they take the late bus home. They've been fantastic, but I can't really speak to them.
Yeah.
But it would be, I mean, what you're talking about is every Monday you commit to stay after with 5 kids, 6 kids. We have to pay stipend for that. If it's a
Right.
teacher says, hey, Joey, you want to stay, if you want to stay after, I'll stay and go over your equation. Like sort of a one-time thing or 2-time thing, but it, the minute it becomes you've committed to do this every Monday, then we have to come up with the money.
Right, and we do have money in the ARP grant that is earmarked for catching students up. Similarly, funding the summer school, we could fund extended school day. I will, however, say that my concern with that being the only avenue for support for students is that the students who are not going to be able to take advantage of it are the ones that are going to need to take the bus home because they have no other transportation. So, it always concerns me that we're maybe not meeting the needs of all of the students who might need that.
Well, don't we have a late bus, Carolyn?
Right, but the late bus, yeah.
But not,
Oh,
like, I don't know if we could, again, okay, to bring us up, send out like this, I don't know if we do a survey to parents, like, is your child struggling in math, or like, again, this is in the infantile stage, but if your child is struggling, would you take the opportunity, however you want to phrase it, like stay after one day a week or something like that?
Yeah, and we can do it, we can explore that for sure. Like I said, I just want to be very transparent that
Yeah.
there are students who are not going to be able to take advantage of that, and that, not that it means we shouldn't do it, right? But it does mean that it could potentially even widen the gap for those students too.
Well, we also need, there's, again, hate to use the word, but there's gotta be some accountability. If we say, 5 kids are gonna stay after school every Monday, so we're gonna pay a stipend to a teacher to stay with them. Those 5 kids better be there. We better be seeing increases in their academic results. Otherwise, if this is just, well, the parent wants it, but the kid won't participate. We're just throwing money at something.
Are the benchmarks, I know they're doing the benchmarks in middle school. Is that across the district at
Yep.
the same time?
Mhm.
Okay, I mean, that's gonna help as well,
Right,
identify the
right.
students.
I feel like I've talked to some parents, and I think it's across the country. So I'm just trying to think, and I don't have every idea, but if there's any way, like, I know like last year, I would pay a tutor to go do it. But I didn't know who to go to, I didn't know if the student would do it, just something, I don't want the kids to just you know, you see them struggle.
And students are great options for some things. Those early literacy skills, I would be hesitant to have a student try and teach because
Yeah.
it can actually confuse, and then there can be things that need to be untaught. So as I'm hearing you say it, I'm like, yeah, maybe more appropriate for like upper elementary or even high school students tutoring middle school students. But I do have concerns about the little ones. Just because, while reading is not an exact science, there is sort of a science to how we teach it. So Yeah.
Maybe there's something, I just know like, in one of our children's classes, they had certain homework and there was a YouTube video. I actually thought it was a teacher version than them. And it walked them through how to do certain problems. So even if like a teacher could say, hey, go to this, like extra math, that was like a bomb going off in my house, but if there was something else extra like that, they could, again, you can have with reading, but I'm just thinking math.
Yeah.
Something extra the teacher could send home, or,
yeah, and it may be different types. So what I'm hearing you say is there may be some opportunities for in-person extended school day type opportunities, but it could also be, money set aside for teachers to create those support videos that can be, worked with at home, especially in a case where a student can't stay because a parent can't pick them up and there is no available transportation. So it might be different approaches to sort of
they
the
could
same.
live stream after school, some are here, some that's. So we can get that.
And then we have to be careful about contractual requirements.
Yeah.
Right, so if
because-
we're paying them,
Or
Um,
even, the suggestions were made about teachers filming their class,
Mhm.
and then if the kid didn't get it, watch it again. That did not go over well because, so next year you don't even need me in the classroom, you're just gonna have this video of me. We have to make sure that we don't get or create more trouble
Right.
than we're, solving.
yeah, and I mean, we'll never replace teachers with videos. That's never gonna solve the problems that we need solved for students, but I definitely think that just support videos of the skill or strategy. And it could be them, or it could be like a Khan Academy type thing, something like that. So we can explore some options and come back to the board.
Jen votes for more homework, because that's what she's saying.
More homework and more parental.
I just wanted, I think that. That. Well, all of it, I was in all the conditions potentially serving families, surveying teachers, because that was one of the first items that see, who's struggling, and it was just September, I think we should start back in the year, but do you think how many children have to be really need extra help or are really struggling at that point? We all want our children to be better and 90s for my child, like go get that 100. So maybe also survey them and. From that end.
Mhm. Thank you.
Anything else?
I just had a question related to the monitors. So I know each principal mentioned it would be helpful to have one more. I'm wondering if ratios. I guess I'm wondering what the lunchroom ratios are, I'm in my walkthrough, Mr. Sight mentioned 4 different periods for lunch, so I'm assuming that's around about 80 children per lunch period, maybe 70, 80. But then I'm hearing, and this might not be true, Alden, that there's a good chunk of time where all the students are in there, so that's 170. That's a big difference. And maybe not 100% of the time, all the children are in there, but even if it's 10, 15 minutes, I mean, that just doesn't sound safe to me. So, I guess how do I form that into a question then?
Are you saying that you think that they need more than one monitor?
I want to know how the one monitor per building was, where that came from. Was it just like we all think we need more, so let's just say one, because that's double, right? You only have one. So I didn't have two. But, or is it based on some type of actual ratio? Like in your
And there
classroom?
isn't a ratio. There's no prescribed class size ratio or supervision ratio outside of the DOE, right? That's what we learned. So the city, New York City DOE, that's the only place that exists where there is a prescribed ratio by regulation.
I think it also depends on what are we gonna do with these monitors? I mean, if fight breaks out in here. Does the monitor go break up the fight? Does the monitor call Steve? Does the monitor, go find Mike? If the monitor is just here to monitor. One person I would think would be okay. If that monitor is gonna be, busting kids for vaping and breaking up fights and, being the sort of authority in charge of these places, that's different. And that's why I asked before, what do we want these people to
Right.
do? They're just watching. I mean, maybe one is fine.
So I also think that we need to be realistic about the fact that any type of staff, regardless of the position, is only going to be as helpful as the training that they have. So on Superintendent's Conference Day, we'll be having training on situational awareness and active supervision for our monitors and aides, and those that are typically in those situations with students. And we'll be having the same training for teachers at a different time because that day is full with other stuff for teachers. But I think that we need to be considerate of that, and one additional monitor would mean that there's one person who is always only in that area when students are there, right? So, as you know, because I believe I mentioned it at a previous meeting, that additionally our cafeteria or recess is staffed by teacher duty, TA and aides duty. And those people can potentially get pulled from time to time. We are up against a staffing issue for substitutes. One that we are attempting to tackle. I know that Dr. Watkins is going to be coming back to the board with a potential for interns, people who are looking to become teachers, who will be here like 3 days a week with it. Yeah, 3 days a week from the local colleges in the area that have teacher prep programs. So we're looking like outside of the box to try and find solutions to just having more bodies at all times. And really training the bodies that we do have to make sure that the supervision is active. I think there comes a point where more bodies isn't beneficial, right? If there's 50 people standing around and there's an incident and someone is saying, go get help. There could be 49 people who are thinking someone else is going to go get help, right? Whereas if there's only a couple of people, it's like, well, one of us needs to act, so they will. So I think we have to be careful about assuming that just throwing more people in a space is going to actually yield better supervision also. So we need to balance that.
I think we can, obviously active supervision is key. You have people and their business, that's not helpful, but I at the same time agree with that one body, even if they're actively supervising, it could really not be enough. I think, as to Perry's point, the monitor's goal is an achieve for buildings or an elementary, like, being having, I don't know how many kids, I passed by the cafeteria, it was like, there was so noisy, and there's so many kids there, maybe like 16 kids at a time, and teachers aides who were supervising, and for them it might be noticing the child doesn't have food, that they don't have money in their account, they brought lunch, maybe a child is choking, they're so young, and whereas in high school it might be breaking up a fight or knowing who to call and how to actively take care of that. But so I think there's a balance. If we don't have like 40 bodies, I think the concern is that we have one in or so. And so I'm also you know, I do think we need more body and to active, make them active,
Mhm.
supervise. I don't think one or the other. And that it needs to change based on the building of who they're watching.
Right, so this would be one additional monitor. We're not saying it would just be one monitor. Right, so there was other staff in there already.
Right,
But-
and I'm not saying it's not, I was just wondering where the,
But what's your vision though? Of fight breaks out here. And we have our monitor here, this new monitor we hired. What do they do?
my vision would be that they're looking for precursor behaviors to prevent
Okay,
the incident from breaking out. in the first
okay,
place.
so. But I mean, what happens when the fight does break out? Do they do anything?
Yeah, I would, I mean, they have to, there's already training in place, right?
Yeah, but if they're gonna
That
break
they
up
all-
fights, that's a
that-
different
Oh, I'm not
level.
saying- I don't know, I don't know.
Yeah.
Right, so I'm gonna
What
say,
happens now?
Right, but.
I don't know.
I'm gonna say it's a dark day in Millbrook when we actually have physical.
But this is exactly what I'm trying to solve, figure out is, what are we trying to solve? You know, there's the. I don't remember, the something in Bloods are fighting in our cafeteria, you know, Crips and Bloods, I mean, what is it that we've seen that we need to solve?
Right, so, and I
Yeah.
think that it's more of the unkind behaviors. I think there's just the overall safety concerns for student health. Is there an adult immediately accessible? I am going to say it again because this is my 8th year in the district. Fights are few and far between. Thankfully, we have pretty good kids. Do they happen? Of course they happen, right? Anytime you put this number of young adults in a concentrated area or adolescents in a concentrated area, they're not always going to get along, but they are rare. But I think it's just the day-to-day incidences of, you know, students disagreeing with one another, students escalating this silly food fighting that can escalate if we don't intervene, you know, safety issues in terms of safe, you know, cafeteria, whatever that means, right? But not necessarily fighting. Could it happen? Sure, it can happen. Is their job to get in there and break it up? I think some people are going to do that, and I think some people are going to take the avenue of trying to get help. I think a lot of that is going to depend on the person, their training, their background. You know, everyone comes from a different place and has had different experiences. That's going to allow them to get help to the scene different, right? That may mean getting an administrator, that may mean intervening yourself.
Right, on the playground, it's safety, you know, like elementary school.
Yeah.
But maybe in the high school, it's, you know, cell phone use and bullying and, you know,
Right.
yeah, it's different.
And that's why when, you know, we don't just hire a monitor and say, oh, well, Alden Place is open, so, you know, we're going to put this person there. We really try to look when we're hiring, and this goes for aides or, you know, monitors, teachers, right? We try to look like, where are they the best fit? So we just hired 2 social studies teachers this year, and one of them definitely has a personality and the sort of engagement that middle school students need. And the other had both phenomenal practitioners for sure. And the other one has the level of rigor and intellect that, you know, secondary teachers, secondary students in the high school. So we make all of those decisions based on what is the need of the building and whose skill set is going to be most appropriate. So even though they may have the same certification, right, or qualification, they may not necessarily be interchangeable parts in all cases. And we look at that based on what our students need and what our buildings.
All right, next. Eric?
So good evening, thank you in advance, for the opportunity to update you briefly on the happening high school. So first, in terms of curriculum work, all of our Eureka math materials have been distributed. We did discover that some were missing, but Cheryl Devine was instrumental in getting any missing items, delivered to our math teachers. So I'd like to acknowledge and thank her in advance. As Caroline had shared, we have training for our math teachers at our upcoming superintendent's conference day. Next, at our new teacher orientation, we introduced curriculum mapping, and all of our new teachers had the opportunity to get a jump start on their maps. All of our other teachers continue to update and revise their maps as needed. Also, we had our first team meeting with Branching Minds. And as Caroline shared, our building rollout will begin with training at our upcoming superintendent's conference day. Yesterday, we started our ELA and math beginning of the year benchmark assessment for all students enrolled in English and math classes. Our testing window, closes this Friday. Students will be recording all of their results after the administration of both assessments, then set a goal for themselves. And we have communicated with classroom teachers to remind students of the importance of setting realistic goals based on the results they see after completing each administration of IXL. In terms of conduct and safety, on the first day of school, we held a school-wide assembly to review our new code of conduct and explicitly explained our school expectations. It's been a very busy start to the school year, but all of our teachers have been doing a great job enforcing the code of conduct and submitting referrals for student infractions. Student referrals are up significantly from last year. For whole perspective, as of yesterday, we already have a total of 87 referrals at the start of the school year. 70 of those 87 referrals are electronic device violations. Last year, from our first day to September 27th, we only had 7 referrals. So again, kudos to our teachers that are really doing a due diligence and referring students to my office. And again, we're just really trying to enforce the electronic device policy and focusing on teaching and learning. Also, our staff has been really busy with safety trainings, and we'll mention that on GCT, DASA, general building safety. Those were presented by Beth Harris and Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES. Beth Harris also provided us with training on the rights of transgender, students discussing intersections of anti-discrimination and harassment laws. And to date, we have already completed 3 evacuation drills and have scheduled our first lockdown drill tomorrow. So that will be our 4th drill to start in 2022 school year. And then lastly, all of our fall sports team are off to great starts. We've had a very busy week this week, as it is Spirit Week. We have our back to school night on Thursday night at 6:30. And we conclude the week with pep rally. Any questions?
Is it correct that community service or civic engagement is not a requirement to graduate from high school for this district? Has it ever been?
I don't
Or
know,
why?
in my time here.
Say again, I
So community service or civic engagement requirements or can be a requirement to graduate high school and at least not for our district, and I was wondering if it ever has been, or we can maybe look at reading that back.
there was, we had, it wasn't a requirement to graduate, but it was an option or alternative for students to work in other in businesses, to work community service. And it just, it really, like, some of the students, would come back and say, I sat in the store all day, or I sat on the bench by the park all day. It really was, because it's such a small community that I think it's hard to place kids in that, you know, in that scene, I mean, given Millbrook. And we could look at it again, but we really have to have a better way to engage them. So if our community service is gonna be working for the town, you know, I don't know, picking up garbage or whatever they would do, or working for the tribute gardens, or versus trying to place kids in commercial establishments. But no, I don't, as far as I know, I mean, my kids have been out of here for 20 years, more actually. And even back then, it wasn't a requirement to graduate.
It's a requirement for National Honor Society, and it's a requirement for membership in certain clubs, but not a requirement for graduation. What Perry was talking about, I think, is the Senior Explorer internship that we used to have, where students were placed at local businesses, and I say local, but some actually traveled if they had an opportunity and transportation. They traveled a distance to match themselves with an opportunity that maybe they thought was in the area that they wanted to explore as a career. But we also, when we had the IB program, we had what was called the CAST project, which was creativity, activity, and service, where students had to explore a problem in their local community. And then do something that was creative, active, and of service to solving the problem. So it could have even been like a global problem, but they were acting locally to help solve it. One example is that there were students who learned how to knit and use tutorials of how to knit with younger students, like Jen was saying. And then they ended up knitting bonnets for babies in like a local NICU kind of thing. So whatever it was, it would be a proposal that came from the student. So those are things that have been embedded in our programming in the past, but not necessarily as a requirement in order to graduate.
And I was just thinking about that. It was one of my requirements for graduating, and I recall, you know, being part of it, certain number of points you had to complete if you attended a public meeting, like a
Meeting,
board
yeah.
meeting, points, for example. And so I'm just trying to believe that you get older students to kind of be incentivized to just be more in our community or community, and maybe, like, for example, Jen brought up the example of maybe if that's part of the research where you're tutoring the children in younger schools that you go to. The PTO, we talk a lot about maybe having athletes or someone to share their experiences or something they accomplished with the younger kids, that would give them credit towards community service. So it does come up, and we incentivize them and just kind of have it across the board, and just kind of make it more community based. If you're, for example, helping to set up for Staff Appreciation Day, and get maybe more volunteer work you're doing, but community service for our district. So that's kind of why I'm looking towards that.
Yeah, it's something we can explore. I think there's lots of different avenues that can be explored. And I know Dr. Watkins in her previous district has an experience doing some of this, so we can talk more about what it could look like here in Millbrook. And then bring something back to the board, because the local graduation requirements are not up to us. They would be up to you. So we can talk more about that.
All set? All right, next is financials and warrants. Do I have a motion to adopt this resolution?
So
Do I have a second? Any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Any against? All right. Establishing the repair reserve fund. Stuff that we were talking about before. Do I have a motion to authorize the establishment of a repair reserve fund? Didn't we already do this?
Now, this is to.
This is to
withdraw
use.
from it.
Right, then we'll have another one at the next meeting to do the dollar.
This says to the establishment of a repair reserve fund. I thought we already established that.
So this, Margot said we have to do this piece in this meeting and then to do the. It was part of the budget,
Mhm.
but she said that we have to
Okay.
do this establishment.
Okay, anyway, do I have a motion? Do I have a second? Any questions or concerns? So just to be clear, so at the next meeting or whenever it comes for, hopefully it's the next meeting, we'll have the actual,
Mhm.
we're gonna use it and put it back.
Mhm.
You know, when we have the numbers we have now, waiting for the pump number, if it changes that, we may ask for an additional authorization, but this will give us access to the money.
Okay.
Giving the board just the ability to give us, votes to make that.
Okay. Could have swore we had already done this, but, all right, all in favor? All right, any against? All right, questions from the public? Just,
We don't have any.
why is there a policy?
It's
Is it-
the policy for public hearing.
Is it always there?
I always got that.
Okay. So we have no questions?
None.
You're officially in the public. Okay. Enrollment report. Just really, we don't need to do anything with it, just for your information. PTO report. Oh,
Can I ask a couple
Yep.
questions?
yeah, sure.
Enrollment, it's more just curiosity, so you probably don't even have the answers to these, but, I'd like to get the answers. So I think a few months ago, a couple board members asked about the number of students that, graduated eighth grade, but then, went elsewhere. Did they move out of the district? Are they attending a different school? Other than being, in our ninth grade class,
Mhm.
that definitely looks like, oh, down in the 60s for the high school now, okay. This could take some time, but I'd be interested to see, I know our enrollment has gone down over the past 10 years, roughly around 1,200 is now 833, but I'm wondering if the proportions for different reasons look different over the years, meaning do we have over the past 10 years, do we have more children, higher percentage that we going towards versus moving into different districts? Why are of those families at least, why are they leaving, right? And then if we actually get in touch with, I personally know a few ninth grade families that have ninth graders that are at boards, but they still have younger children here. So can we enter into some type of conversations with those families? Why is it that your children are attending somewhere else? Can we retain their younger children? Are there things we can work on?
Mhm.
Why are they, if it's just sports or religious reasons, that's one, we may not be able to do anything about that. And we might be assuming it's those reasons, but maybe it's other reasons.
Yeah.
That we don't know about.
Mhm.
So those are my wonders.
Brought up many years ago. Back under Superintendent D'Angelo brought up when we lost 13 children, eighth graders that did not go on to the grade. I believe 11 of those 13 went to Lord's. And there are numerous different reasons. And I believe we went back and Mr. Cabello tried contacting people, but the reports were not accurate on those that did reply back. there are numerous different reasons, you know, one of them, I think, Lord starts to market early. And, you know, I brought up years back that we don't show our middle schoolers, our eighth graders, the high school, the inside of the high school until May. And the high school might as well be in the middle of Indiana, for most of these children, they've never been inside of it. And I thought that possibly if we had a parent night, or like in November, or the holidays, and then we have the children and the parents, for the school, that might not be a bad idea, the eighth grade. Is a way of trying to retain, get the children to be excited about the high school. Lord starts in October, actually September, they're already doing visits, aren't they, from school districts, Caroline?
I'm not sure that they've started yet, but they
Okay, will
definitely
be in
start in the
October.
next couple months, yeah.
So that they start early, and we have to try to recruit our own students to stay here, and I think it's not just for this district, I think it's all public.
Yeah, and I think that some of this has to do with, and I'm not speaking negatively about anywhere, right? I think that Lords does a good job of telling their story. And I think it's something that Millbrook needs to work on. So we're engaged in a strategic planning process. As you know, part of that is also a branding process, right? And that will allow us to communicate more effectively all the good things that are happening here. And really give us that sort of starting point with some of what you're saying, Chris, and like, how do we retain these kids? By telling our story, and getting the real information out there. And doing a lot of the community relations piece of what Lords does really well, right? You know, I say it about neighboring districts who they're good because they say they're good. And they say it all the time, and they put it out there on, you know, in print about how wonderful they are, right? Do they have similar issues to every other school district in the county? Of course they do, but that's not what you see, and that's not the story that they tell. And when you don't tell the story first, other people fill that vacuum for you. So we have to do a better job of putting our messaging out there, and letting people see the Millbrook through our lens, because it is a great place to work and it's a great place to go to school.
The first one of the year is always the toughest because you have nothing to compare it to.
Right.
But do we know what the total number was last year, like year end? I'm just curious to see, obviously pre-K changed and everything else. You don't have to answer it now, it's just, it's good to see, because I think we've been pretty consistent the last 2 to 3 years.
Yeah. So 834 was our enrollment towards the end of last year. Off the top of my head, I know that number was 834
Okay.
at some point towards the end of the year. So we just need to, for the next meeting, what we can do is we can just fill a column that can give you like June.
And the grades are gonna be obviously.
Yeah.
the last year. So, no, I mean, the total number is fine. I was just curious. So we were pretty consistent to last year.
But another way to look at it, Chris, is the answer, if we put out a survey, the answer we would get to the survey. And if you then met with some of those parents and said, hey, how come you put your kid in Lords? If they were honest with you, you would get a completely, in some cases, a completely different answer. An answer that, well, never mind. Some we should discuss in executive session, probably.
Yes.
And I think one of the other things that we need to consider, specifically with a school like Lords, there are some legacy students, right? Everyone in their family has gone there, so they're going there. It doesn't, we could lay a golden egg here. It's not gonna keep some students, but I definitely think that there are some that we could, you know, attract back to Millbrook over time.
We haven't had a football team
Yeah.
in 3-4 years at least. You know, if you want to play football, you gotta go to Lords. Or you gotta, like, we tried to have those kids go over to Dover and play it. I mean, that's like.
On
such a
that note,
big-
great job on the modified. team. That's a start.
Yeah,
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 Gotta
well,
build a program, right?
but. Yeah, well, we can. Okay, let's see. PTO report.
So Carolyn already mentioned, the first annual meet and greet for the district is October 7th at 5:30. The PTO would really love if everyone from the board can attend. I'll speak for myself as a VP for Alden. Mr. Lipke and I met last week, and we have a lot of really exciting events planned throughout the year. Now that we're back from COVID, we have a little bit of a budget for each school, and we're really excited for some after-school events, to not only provide enrichment for the children, but also to give parents, more time, that extra hour or two after school. So we're trying to do something maybe once a month, maybe more so around holiday times as well. And in regards to the meet and greet, I think I mentioned before, but I wanted to see if we can get t-shirts. I think I'm a t-shirt, but I feel very strong that we can all represent, and I did it with my own shirt, but if we can somehow maybe get that in the budget, so we can all, show that laser pride and that visualization of the team blue. And I was also thinking that for all the new hires we saw here today, everyone, imagine if everyone went, which is great. I think that just visually shows really supported by you. And that is all.
We're gonna need them by like Thursday is laser spirit. Somewhere you might like
You can stop at my house and
Very
borrow
good.
one, but that's the best I can do.
What was the you said about
The first is,
asking us to show up?
yes, October 7th at 5:30 in the Alden City Lawn. It's the first meet and greet for the district. So hopefully this is something we have to do.
That's a Friday.
Bring your own blanket, bring your own food, there might be snacks provided for free. Not necessarily a fundraiser, that's just really to meet each other.
And then the whole family. right?
Just bring the dog, bring the family.
The dog.
I don't know, one Jennifer.
Okay, don't.
All right. MEF report?
Okay, yeah, so MEF, we had, tables at the high school, it's coming this Thursday, but we had, tables and information and welcome bags for all the new families in the district. So even if there was an incoming 10th grader, we did, we're doing, it's on the high school yet, welcome backs for all incoming families, pre-K, kindergarten, and then anyone new in the district. So that's really what we spent the past couple weeks working on, and then there'll be more to come, I think. Over the past few months, we've had 3 or 4 new board members, so that's very exciting. I think we're around 14, and we're always, well, not always, but we're open to taking on another, 2 or 3 more. If there's anyone out there interested. That's about it, right?
Very good. All right, future agenda items. Again, if you have anything, just please, send it to me or send it to Cheryl and she'll get it on there. The next thing is proposed executive session, just for anybody in the public or listening. We may come back from executive session and take action. So, then this doesn't automatically mean the meeting is over. With that, do I have a motion to go to executive session? Do I have a second? All in favor? Aye. Any against? Okay.